get started and start the exciting process of discovering the new Scottish Global Enlightenment. My name is Wycherley. I'm a digital marketing specialist in Scotland and award-winning marketer and journalist. And so I've been able to pull together some amazing talent tonight for the Michael Sekora show. I think that's what we should call it. We've got some fascinating discussions coming out from Michael Sekora. We're going to tell you a lot more about Michael Sekora's background before we get started. But before that, I would like to introduce you to Margaret. Margaret Walsh has been an expert in national security, geopolitical and economic risk management, business security, rapid situational analysis and decision-making necessary in critical management and response. And the reason why I am introducing her into the event is because she's the brains behind this whole project. She's the one who's living here in Scotland and who's decided that we need to, in the period of crisis that we're living in, have new ways of thinking about how Scotland should move forward in particular. This is a crisis which requires new ways of thinking, innovative systems, and solutions to the extreme levels of suffering that people are going to be experiencing, whether it's business, economic, environment, etc., during the next couple of months as we all survive the lockdown as well. So Margaret also is involved in a number of projects besides this Socrates project, which she hopes to bring to Scotland. Despite being living here for the last 4 years, she's also involved in a project which is about developing a new hub for academic publishing. She's also involved in a new project to actually try and let all the artists and artisans who have been disappointed by the cancellation of the Fringe, the Book Festival, the Edinburgh International Festival. She's developing a platform where they can all still manage to perform and sell their goods and entertain people. She's also in the process of developing a platform which will allow arts, small to medium-sized arts and artists to be able to sell their products and services as well as this Socrates project. So as you can see, Margaret, who is one of the new Scots of Scotland, has got a very interesting perspective, as I know a lot of you do in the room. And I think it's very interesting to be able to say, to see ourselves as others see us. And I think Margaret has fallen in love with Scotland and the potential that Scotland has based on some of the successes we've had and some of the innate characteristics that we have, as well as our total embrace of all the new personalities, nationalities, and identities that are now being embraced by Scotland completely. So on that note, let me introduce you to Margaret, who's going to give you a couple of minutes introduction to herself, because she's going to be able to answer some of the questions as well later on when we do the Q&A. So we'll do a couple of minutes with Margaret, then I'll introduce you to Michael, and then we'll let Michael talk for 20 minutes until about 7:45. And at that point, we have a whole bunch of questions already that a lot of people have sent us. But feel free to be asking your questions in the chat as well, and I'll pick them up and I'll make sure that Michael answers them. And if we don't have time to get to all the questions during the session until 8:30, then we can come back and deal with them at another session, which we will tell you about later. Okay, on that note, Margaret, please unmute yourself and please take the stage.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see so many people interested in the project that I've been developing actually for past 2 years. Why Edinburgh? Why Scotland? Well, by coincidence, my son dragged me here. He's studying at Edinburgh University. Mommy, come with me. I don't want to live alone. So I came. I fell in love with the city. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with Highlands. And I am hoping to retire here, actually. About myself, I am Polish Canadian. I was born in Poland, raised actually around the world, and living in Canada for a number of years. I did share of work under various circumstances, happy, sad, tragic, as it is when you work with government and for government in the different roles. Global initiatives and solutions is really how I see the world. I see the world as a multi-layered platforms, all joined together, all has a purpose. So for me, seeing that someone is doing only one thing without knowing about the rest, it's kind of like a dissonance of nature. I met many people who specialize in one thing and they will push only their little single agenda and yet miss out on everything because they do not have an outlook on everything else. So let's say global initiatives and solutions is my legacy, a multidisciplinary consultancy and a multidisciplinary think tank. Everything has a purpose, everyone has a talent, everyone has to be included. This is how I see the world, and education and every aspect of our lives works the same way. We have to be in unison, we have to be in harmony with that. The broader perspective gives unique ability to understand and experience everything. So it's holistic, everything has to be holistic, inclusive, forward and with better understanding of the real world. And when you understand the real objective, then your goals become real as well, because really what matters is the reality. This is really what matters in life. And this pandemic now, that's why we are here. This is why the program actually got speed up. The entire idea got speed up by the pandemic. That program exposed many vulnerabilities. Actually, all our vulnerabilities came really, really down to bear. We need the time now to step back and to look at radical changes, environmental, social, political, economic. We need to show that there is no way to continue with as it was before after the current crisis. We like it or not, our lives have been taken apart, put upside down. Now we have to deal with it. Now, the main problem is how to unlock the economy. Now, how our economy should look like. We need clean energy, because we know that in the polluted cities, people are dying. So we need clean energy, we need innovative industry and infrastructure. We need sustainability. We need to be able to sustain our cities, our communities. We need responsible production, responsible consumption, and we need to deal with mass unemployment. And that is the biggest problem, because that will create poverty, that will create hunger. That is going to affect everyone's health and well-being. That will need changes in education, that will need different outlook. Food security. When I am not able to buy a flour and a yeast to make a bread, there is something wrong with it. So food security, we have to take it very seriously. We have to look seriously at our oceans and forests and ecosystems. Basically, all what we need, and that's how I see the world, that's the mission, let's call it Margaret's mission, how pompatic it sounds. There's a partnership of all the people in institutions. And that partnership will require shifting of our mind. So mind shift. Mind shift is the beginning of change. And people must come first. That's why I brought to Scotland Socrates. I would like to introduce to Scotland Socrates as a Scottish idea, and Socrates as a totally inclusive system. Not many people know that Socrates actually was originally built with SMEs in mind. Mike is going to talk about it. And Socrates is ideal to unlock and sustain the economy, to holistically underpin everything that is dear in our society, to connect all of us. I think it's ideal for Scotland because people in Scotland are wonderful, are technology oriented, and also Scotland has the possibility of becoming one of the global technology superpowers. There is a strong social underpinning of the society. People care about environmental values. I call them Scottish values. As a Canadian, I see the same thing in Canada. We are quite similar. Actually, I used to live in Nova Scotia in Canada, so now I live in Scotia proper, and I'm very happy about it. I see Socrates as being a Scottish initiative, absolutely Scottish initiative that has no boundaries to sustainable development. People must come first. All the economy runs for people. Without people, there is no economy. And I think this is answering exactly a letter which I received, like every one of us, from our First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. She says exactly that. People must come first, and now everybody, we all have to come to the table and decide what next. So with that, I leave the floor to Finn and to Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Margaret. That was amazing. Wonderful. All right, I'm just going to mute your mic. So that gives you a kind of perspective on why we're bringing this Socrates project to Scotland by the amazing Margaret. But let us introduce you now to Michael Sekora. Michael is the founding director of the Socrates project. He's the owner of the Socrates project. He was involved in the joint Reagan White House US intelligence community initiative with a twofold mission, utilizing all source intelligence and other data to determine the true underlying cause of US economic and military decline, and then develop the means to reverse that decline that would ensure America's status as a superpower for generations. Socrates was fully successful in both parts of its mission. The Socrates automated innovation system was validated on President Reagan's highest priority initiatives to include Star Wars, stealth counter-stealth, resurrection of the US integrated circuit industry, and the dismemberment of the Soviet Union. So Michael, please feel free to take the floor.
Thank you very much. That was a great introduction on both of your parts. Let me just do a couple things. We're at 1:19, and I was playing with my phone. I was trying to get my clock up. That's what I was doing there. But a couple things to get started off. First of all, there's so much ground to cover, and I've been doing this for 37 years. And as I like to point out, I started when I was 3 years old, and I'm really not that old. The other thing is very, very informal. One of the things I've briefed all the way, a lot of times in Congress, White House, you know, Prime Minister of Poland, the Parliament of Poland, and various other countries, Malaysia, what have you. And I found that formal briefings, formal presentations are very ineffective, but yet a conversation where we discuss, we bring up issues in a very informal fashion is the most effective way to convey and to learn. That also means that I really highly doubt we're going to get through all this today. We probably won't even scratch the surface. One of the things that Butch likes to point out, who is on the screen somewhere, is that people, how long does it take to get an MBA? 2.5 years, year and a half? But yet people think they're going to understand technology-based planning in a 2-hour briefing. Can't do it. It's radically different. The key part of it, though, is making the mental shifts. But before I go into that, let me just give a little bit of my background. I'm out of Detroit, Flint area, real nice garden spot, no crime. Actually, we were the leading spot for homicide in the entire country for years. We beat out Chicago, Detroit, and we were proud of it. So very rough area. My family was General Motors. Actually, half my family was 3 generations General Motors. The other half was actually Dow Chemical Company, founding members of Dow Chemical Company. But going further back, I'm actually half British and Scottish, okay? And the funny story goes, my family left the UK back in the 1700s and came to the States. My great-great-grandfather signed the Declaration of Independence, was a Stockton. And in the 70s, we decided to go back and get the family home back, okay? Because the government, because they were so perturbed, my great-great-grandfather for signing the Declaration of Independence, they seized all the property. Well, as the story goes, we went back to the government, hired some attorneys back in England to go in there and see what we can do about the properties. And the government said, you can have it back, no problem. One stipulation, you got to pay all the back taxes since 1719. So bottom line is we were very, very connected. It was in Chester, England. My personal background is I'm a physicist by training, University of Michigan, Mine University. Started at age 15, bachelor's 17, master's 19 before I got recruited by CIA. Originally did a lot of the fun stuff, covert operative, spent a lot of time in places we don't talk about, and which has made some interesting stories when we deal with the SEALs and the Rangers and all the good stuff. But let's fast forward to today. What we want to talk about today is Socrates. We want to talk about Scotland. And one of the things that Margaret pointed out, which is extremely important, is this has to be a 100% Scottish initiative. Okay, we may agree at some point that, yeah, US has to play this role in it, but as it expands out and more people become involved, if it's viewed as a US initiative in any way, shape, or form, it will undermine the effort to push it forward to do what needs to be done for Scotland. Okay, so it has to be manned by Scots, led by Scots, and from the full range of people. Okay, let me get a little bit into Socrates. One of the things that's very, very important, and Margaret, you make a wonderful straight person. Okay, did anybody notice the two pictures behind me? Does anybody know what they are? The one on the left, my left, is the Zen representation of the concept of mushin. The one on the other side is the kanji representing the actual word of what mushin means, which is no mind. Is anybody familiar with the concept of mushin? Mushin is the concept of no mind, and it's very, very ancient, and you can actually find that concept coming up in many, many places worldwide. We may call it mushin in Asia, but yet it was the foundation of what many believe made Napoleon great, what made Patton great, what made Rommel great, which was to see the battlefield, to see the environment, the competitive environment for exactly what it is, not what you think it is, not what you'd like it to be, but truly what it is in terms of the competition and in terms of the full range of opportunities and constraints. If we look at Rommel, for example, during World War II, he was notorious for going right down to the battlefield to figure out exactly what was going on. He didn't want to get runners, he didn't want to get telegrams, he wanted to see it. So it was unbiased, okay? There's a story that once him and his driver are driving down there, he's looking at the battlefield, seeing what happened and everything else, and his driver said, General, we're getting close to the line, the line between German and the Allied troops. And he said, well, that's not a problem. We'll keep on going. He said, well, sir, the line is back there. We already passed it. We're in US territory at this time. And actually, the driver got shot after that, and it was into him. But the point is, Socrates was built on the concept of mushin, which means the ability, and we'll go into all the details, the ability to truly see the competitive environment for what it is, with all the opportunities and constraints in an unbiased fashion, such that we can, from an open mindset, be able to truly see what needs to be done. Let me digress for a second. If we talk about mushin, the impact of that is twofold. Number one, and this goes all the way back, mushin usually referred in the early days to the samurai with the sword fighting and everything else. What it allowed the sword fighters to do is to see the adversary, the battlefield for what it was, with no bias or preconceived ideas. What was the impact? They could make the correct decision, but just as importantly, they could make the correct decision very rapidly. Okay? Point being is, if you have all these preconceived ideas about what you expect it to be, any information which comes in has to fight against those preconceived ideas, or what Mushin would talk about, what's it called, sickness of the mind. Okay, these preconceived ideas. Socrates was allowed you to see exactly what's going on in the competitive environment with no bias, such that you can make the correct decision and be in a position to make that decision rapidly. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, So much for backup. Let's get into a little bit where Socrates came from. That's very important, and then go into the foundational and everything else. Socrates was founded back in 1983 by myself, and I won't go through all the history. We can do that another time, maybe over a beer or something when I get there. But rather because we saw the problem of U.S. economic failure to decline. So what the objective was to use all source intelligence and other data to truly understand what that underlying problem was. Because back in the 80s, when we started it, everybody from Harvard and the professors and consultants were giving one-line explanations of the problem and the required solution. Like we need to level the playing field, it's Japan not playing by the rules, on and on and on. So we knew if we were going to truly achieve the objective of ensuring America's status, economic health, military might for generations, we needed to get down to that foundational level. So we used all source intelligence and other data to compile a picture of competition worldwide, military, economic, terrorism, counterterrorism, full ball of wax, which was detailed, more holistic than anything anybody had before or after. Because we're sitting in the center of the intel community with NSA, CIA, DIA, and the other alphabet organizations access information. Okay, here's what we found out. We found out that the cause of the decline was the US began shifting at the end of World War II from technology-based planning to finance-based planning. That's the underlying cause of the problem. Let me also point out that the US is still doing finance-based planning. Okay, what's the difference? And this is, if we do nothing else besides for a good introduction, if we do nothing else to begin the process of making that mental shift, we will have accomplished a lot. Because until you make that mental shift of the difference between the two, Socrates doesn't make any sense. Or you will see it as a little tool off on the side. But once you make that mental shift, the world becomes radically different on how you view competition and what the opportunity constraints are and how the world operates. Okay, what's the difference? In finance-based planning, which is the basis of MBAs and everything else, and Butch is an MBA, so he can sit there and say, you know, I've been through it, and we've dealt with many MBAs in Harvard and all the other places. In finance-based planning, the foundation of all decision-making is the exploitation of the funds. And the measure of success after the fact is how well did I exploit my funds? So it's ROI, it's market share. If you're a nonprofit, is how many people did I feed with the amount of money that was donated? Or how much money did I get donated as a result of the people I fed? Okay, so, and even if you talk about the major US corporations, because we work with GE, Ford, Boeing, you name it, we've worked with most of the Fortune 10 corporations in the United States. It always begins and ends with the financial spreadsheet, okay? Now, technology-based planning, in technology-based planning, the foundation of all decision-making is exploiting the technology more effectively than the competition to generate a true competitive advantage in the marketplace, on the world stage, or on the battlefield. Where exploitation is the development, acquisition, and utilization of technology. Okay? Now, a couple things. When we talk about technology, one of the very, very key points is how we define technology. Very few people define technology correctly. And that's, you know, the president of IBM, who I sat on panels with, and Michael Dell, who, you know, lives down the street from us, I've known for 30 years, and all this other stuff. Okay, they define it as IT, or they define it as leading edge. Technology is properly defined as any application of science to accomplish a function. Science can be high-tech, low-tech, medium-tech. The function can be something world-shattering, or it can be making sure that the flowers are delivered and stay as fresh as possible because of certain sensors, because of certain thermal conduction materials and whatever. Okay, those are all technologies, and when exploited more effectively than the competition, has the ability to generate a competitive advantage. Okay, so that's what we saw. We saw that that was the difference. We know why the United States began shifting over to finance-based planning. And going back to Socrates' history, the only way we could ensure America's status and reverse the decline was to shift the country back to technology-based planning. Okay. Now, just to digress for a second, when we talk about when you understand that technology is any application of science, high-tech, low-tech, medium-tech, and it can be both hard and soft, because technology consists of equipment, material, and know-how. And in some cases, the technology is just all a bunch of know-how, okay? When you understand that, and you understand the function to be accomplished, can be anything from earth-shattering, a quote, disruptive technology, a term that I just cringe every time I hear it, because everything has the potential of being disruptive at various levels, okay? And this idea, this is disruptive and that's not, it's like, that's a very simplistic view of the world, okay? So if you understand that any of those functions, the loading dock, everything from the loading dock to the new product, to the sales, to whatever, has the potential of providing a competitive advantage if you exploit the technology more effectively than the other guy. That means that when we look at the competitive ecosystem of Scotland, that means the technology-based planning is applicable to high-tech companies, small tech, the startup, the medium, and it's applicable to the full range of functions throughout the organization. It's just as applicable to the government programs as much as the private sector. And it's just as applicable to the high-tech or low-tech. In Colombia, when we're down there, the first operation we're looking at executing is on cut flowers. And people say, how can it be technology in there? There's massive amounts of technology. Same thing in Malaysia, where we're talking about palm oil, very low tech, but that's one of their major industries, so that's what we must address. So once you understand that, you can see why it's applicable to the full range of organizations at all levels. So continuing with history and trying to get through as quickly as possible. So we saw we need to transition the United States back to technology-based planning, okay? And here's the rub. We looked at the Soviet Union, we looked at some of the other players, and we found that their technology-based planning had become more sophisticated than what we did before World War II. Because we actually talked to some of the old timers at GM and Lockheed, Martin Marietta, and all those other places that knew, remember the old days before the war, and they say, yeah, we did technology-based planning. The guys who did the technology made the first foundational decisions, and then the finance guys came in and did it from there. Because remember, how effectively you exploit the technology relative to competition fully dictates the amount of other resources you need and how you deploy them to generate the required competitive advantage, where the other resources are money, manpower, natural resources, basically everything but technology. If they've got more manpower, you get automation. If they've got a bigger supply of coal, all of a sudden you're going to alternate energy. Okay, technology allows you to outmaneuver all the other resources. Okay, so going back to history. So we found out everybody else has become more advanced. So we said, if we're going to guarantee the economic health of the US and well as our allies, because we were chartered not just to address the US, but also our key allies, we need to figure out how to leapfrog over people like the Soviets. Here's the cool thing we found. We found that technology-based planning makes evolutionary leaps forward every so many hundreds of years, right? Scientific revolution, the Industrial Revolution, all those were major leaps on how we exploited technology, developed, acquired, and utilized. And whoever did that was a world leader. We also, which is another time I can show you some really cool graphics, we determined what causes those evolutionary leaps in technology-based planning. It's where mankind himself and the resources he utilizes goes from basic, refined to standardized. Once one of those transpires and goes to the next level, you get the next leap in technology-based planning. We also determined that technology-based planning was going to make the next evolutionary leap, which was the automated innovation revolution. That's where the decision process for exploiting technology, developing, acquiring, and utilizing, can be automated such that the technology is exploited with unprecedented speed, efficiency, and agility, okay? If you look at technology exploitation right now, it has not changed since the Industrial Revolution. It's basically the same, okay? And everybody goes, oh no, we got the internet. We can talk to great spaces and from here to there. The basic foundation has not changed. If you look at what people do to address speed or efficiency of innovation, they address the sociological, psychological, or financial aspects of the process. They have psychology people come in and say it's okay to fail fast. That's coming out of Silicon Valley now. Learn to fail fast. more efficient utilization of money. You don't go there and continue to hammer on it. You also have people over in Navy, and it's transpired now to more of DOD, that says the key is allowing people to talk together. So we put in rooms with pool tables so the guys feel more comfortable talking to each other. Or we figure out how to target our money better. Okay, we'll increase the R&D budget, which is coming out of our Congress. We double our R&D budget, that's going to show other people how bad we are. Okay. Bottom line is all those are peripheral to the actual exploitation of technology, and as a result, the impact is minimal at best, and sometimes it's negative. Automated innovation directly addresses the technology. I'm going to give you a real simple example. If we talk about technology breakthroughs, or if we talk about even a breakthrough in terms of mildly improving a technology, in every case, without a doubt, without an exception, it is a result of one thing and one thing only: the cross-pollination of two or more technologies. It's technology A bumping into technology B to produce technology C, or technology A bumping into technology B and improving certain attributes of it. Okay, that's all it is. But if we look at it right now, how do we cause that to happen? We have cocktail parties, we have conferences. And the objective and the hope is that Professor A with technology A is going to go to the conference and run into technology B that's owned by Professor B, and they're going to talk with a beer and all of a sudden say, hey, I got A, you got B. Hey, let's cross-pollinate, work together and come up with technology C. That's how it's always worked since the Industrial Revolution. So National Science Foundation, who we worked with off and on for years, their solution to that problem to increase innovation rate is to double the budget for conference parties, cocktail parties and conferences. But the actual efficiency is basically the same. Now imagine, if you will, you can map out technology space, which we'll describe more in a moment, where you can look at the laws of physics that says, as defined in black and white by the laws of physics, it says technology A, when combined with technology B, cross-pollinated, will produce technology C, number one. Number two, and that's what we call the technology capability dimension, we know exactly where the level is in A and the level is in B in particular organizations to say, we need to call up Professor A and call up Professor B and say, let's have a Skype call or a Zoom call and get together and start talking, because we know it will produce technology C. Because of their capability levels, we know exactly what capability technology C is going to have, and we know what competitive advantage it's going to generate in the marketplace. So instead of waiting for things to magically happen, serendipity, we're now very precisely addressing the technology, not the peripheral aspect of the environment, but rather precisely manipulating and maneuvering in the technology for a competitive advantage. As a result, our speed, efficiency, and agility significantly increases. So, continuing with history, we developed what we call the first generation automated innovation system. And we can walk you through all the nuts and bolts and concepts behind it. We then proved its viability by supporting Reagan's, as Finn said, highest priority government programs like Star Wars itself and SDIO, Star Wars, and a bunch of other programs, including high performance computing and integrated circuits and a bunch of other cool stuff. As a result, President Reagan had an executive order drafted creating a new federal agency, the mandate of creating a new federal agency, with the task of deploying the system for the United States and then from there into our allies. For make a long story short, before it could be signed off on, Reagan's term came to an end, Bush came in and abolished the program. So that in a nutshell is our history. Finn, how are we doing on time? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, go on, keep going. We're good. Carry on for another 5 or 6 minutes or so.
Okay. So in the concept, one of the things about technology-based planning, and again, we've lectured this all over the world, and I've debated, we're at University of Warsaw. At University of Warsaw, because I was discussing with the dean there, and he said, how do we prove it? And I said, put together a room with all your professors, graduate students, get the biggest auditorium you can, and I'll sit there and answer the questions. If I can't stand up to trial by fire, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't continue working together. So, make a long story short, we found that to do Socrates, we had to go to the bare bones foundational basis of the exploitation of innovation, of technology rather, okay, automated innovation. Here's what we found, what we call the 10 foundational truths. And we'll go through them real fast and then come back to them. Number one, all competitive advantage is a matter of satisfying the customer need better than the other guy, okay? Now, when we started working with Ford or GE, we always maintained, always insisted that we get all the grand poobahs together for a meeting beforehand, and sometimes an all-day meeting, okay? By grand poobah, I mean the vice presidents, the directors, things like that. And I would ask them simple questions like, can anybody define what a competitive advantage is? You wouldn't believe the answers we'd get. It's 10 times earnings. It's a margins of this. Every one of them came up with some financial and marketing answer, but not one of them said, producing products or services that satisfies the customer need better than company X. If you are not satisfying the customer need better than the other guy, you are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You may have some more money than the other guy to survive a little bit longer, but you are going to die. Jack Welch, who we work with GE, made that mistake because it was pure finance-based planning, and that's what drove GE into the ground. Because they were busy optimizing the funds, and customer needs, we don't care about. Okay, so the first truth was all competitive advantage, no matter satisfying the customer than the better than the other guy, where the customer needs to be something which is really, really critical, something which is low, it can be providing it on time, it can be a wide range of things. But if you look at the full range of companies who are successful, everything from Google to Amazon to whoever, they're excelling at satisfying one or more customer needs. The other thing for this to be true is it has to be taken from the customer's point of view. If cost was the true thing that customers only cared about, we'd all be driving Yugos and wearing gray jumpsuits. And my jumpsuit hasn't been worn in a long time, and I sure the hell don't drive a Yugo, okay? So it's that full range of customer needs. Number two, technology is what enables you to satisfy the customer's needs, period, okay? High tech, low tech, medium tech, big, small, whatever. When you define technology properly, it is what enables you to satisfy the customer needs. And I've debated this. I had the head of the marketing department at the University of Paris try to challenge me in class all the time. He'd say, oh, what about perfume? What about French bread? And every day he came into class, and most of the people in the class were people like vice presidents, directors, things like that from around the world. They'd come up with all these examples of why I was wrong. I'd say, okay, cool, let's break it down. And we walk right through it. So excelling at satisfying the customer need is taken from the customer's point of view. The customer can be illogical on how that is satisfied in terms of what they want satisfied, but in terms of the ability to actually satisfy it or excel at satisfying it, always boils down to technology, okay? Point number three, or truth number three, to satisfy the customer need better than the competition, you must exploit the technology more effectively than the competition, okay? With exploitation is develop, acquire, and or utilize. Number four, and here's where it gets cool. We found out that there's 4 attributes inherent in all technology, high tech, low tech, medium tech, which dictate its ability to satisfy the customer's needs. How it's defined by the laws of physics, what its capabilities level is, how it's flowing, and how it evolves over time, okay? Sounds simple, but it's as basic as that. I love physics because it simplifies the world, not because it makes it more complex, okay? That's the beauty and strength of physics. So we got those 4 attributes of all technology. So if you take, truth number 5, if you take those 4 attributes of all technologies, structure, capability, flow, and time, and combine them together for all past, present, and future technologies, and again, future, you get 4-dimensional technology space. Those 4 dimensions dictate how technology can be exploited for a competitive advantage: acquisition, utilization, and development. 4 dimensions are as follows: technology structure. That's defined as how technologies fit together as defined by the laws of physics, which dictates which customer needs you can satisfy, period. Okay? You can't violate the laws of physics. Now, those laws of physics may go so far out that you can't accomplish them with the technology capability levels that are available today, but it still defines how you can satisfy the customer, or which customer needs you can satisfy, right? Okay. And there's an old philosophical debate about the interesting laws of nature and laws of physics, which we can go into another time. Second dimension is capability, which is what is the level of capability for all the technologies in the structure dimension around the world in the various organizations. That dictates how well you can satisfy a customer need. Third dimension is flow, which is defined as how the technology is flowing between organizations and internal. That dictates how technology is going to evolve forward. Why? Because how does the technology evolve? Cross-pollination. Technology A bumps into technology B. It's got to flow. Fourth dimension is time. That's defined as how the other four dimensions evolve forward. Okay? Now, here's the next cool part. In order to generate a capability or to generate a competitive advantage, like we talked about initially, excelling to satisfy the customer need better than the other guy, you must outmaneuver the competition in one or more of those four dimensions. Okay? And as a side note, that four-dimensional technology space has no discontinuities. Nothing magically happens in there. You can't miraculously produce a product out of thin air. No. There's always a logical progression through the four dimensions in order to excel at satisfying the customer need, and it also defines how you can satisfy the customer need. Okay? And to generate a competitive advantage, you must outmaneuver the competition in one or more of those four dimensions. And again, we're hitting the high points, tremendous depth here. We can go into whatever level you want at a later time. Next thing we found out, here's where it's real cool, and this includes both organizations at all levels, private, public, as well as countries. One of the things I always cringe or laugh about is Michael Porter's books that say, well, if you're a company or a startup, this is what the strategy is. And if you're a conglomerate, this is what it is. And if you're a country, strategy is this. That's incorrect. Okay. Strategy is the same at all levels, from a small startup all the way to a nation or NATO as a conglomerate of nations. Is how we exploit technology more effectively in the competition, and that occurs in all four dimensions. Now, we also point out that how effectively you maneuver in the technology space of those four dimensions fully dictates everything above it. What's above it? Manpower, finance, natural resource, and everything else. So you're maneuvering in an area where there's no discontinuities. It's all logical, which then dictates both amounts and how you deploy everything above it. Okay? Logical dictates this above it. Now, here's the next cool thing we found. We found that maneuvering in technology space is conceptually, not as an analogy, but conceptually the same as maneuvering on the military battlefield. So we could take the oldest science of mankind, which is the science of military strategy, codify it, and utilize it to maneuver on in technology space. Okay? What that resulted in was a closed set of technology strategy elements which dictate how everybody can maneuver in technology space. So if you take the various business things like disruptive technology, core competency, planning, blue ocean, all those various ones, every one of those boils down to, in its essence, one of the various technology maneuvers within technology space. A disruptive technology is nothing more than a flank attack in the technology structure dimension. Blue ocean is an isolation maneuver, okay? But the difference is we turn that black art that China and Michael Dell and Bill Gates and everything else execute as an art into a science. Yes. Oh, you were waving the pen. I thought you were trying to interrupt me. So very quickly, we're almost done with this. So we took science and military strategy, now have the set of technology strategy elements, closed set. We have technology space, which is a four-dimensional closed set. And that set of technology strategy elements is a closed set, fully defines the technology strategy elements within the four dimensions and defines all their attributes in terms of speed, efficiency, and agility. Now what that allows us to do is build a system. Because if you look at the first 5 truths, okay, what that says is you can map technology space. You can map it out on a piece of paper, you can map it out digitally, you can rotate it, you can divide it, you can look at it, you can examine it. Second set of 5 findings basically says you could program a computer, like a chess computer, to do a range of things, basically 4 things within that, on that technology space map. Identify who the competitors are, determine their technology strategies long before they're executed, identify all the opportunities, constraints, both present and potential future opportunities and constraints, and then from there, lastly, play the what if game. We're sitting here, we need to generate a competitive advantage, we need to feed more hungry people, we need to have a small startup with a competitive advantage. We can see the opportunities, constraints. We can see the technologies we have. We can see our competitors' technology strategies and say, ooh, if we acquire this technology and we're a $5,000 startup, we're going to be doing head-to-head against General Motors. And let me tell you, a frontal attack against General Motors is a war of attrition, which means you're going to die really quick. On the other hand, if we do a technology isolation offensive, we can very narrowly focus, generate a true competitive advantage, punch a hole in General Motors' strategy, generate a competitive advantage, and then very systematically move on from there. So that is the Socrates system. But as we said in some of the answers to the questions, it also can be executed manually. We've taught it manually, and in almost all cases, we teach it manually, such that it's like learning to add and subtract. If you took a 6-year-old and gave him a calculator and used that all his life, he'd be at a disadvantage. If you teach him how to add and subtract manually, and then say, here's a calculator, he can use it more effectively. Same thing here. In Malaysia and other places, we've gone in and taught many classes, a lot of the companies, startups, things like that, on how to do technology-based planning, get the mental shift, give them the basics, they start doing it in preparation for then getting the system. That's it.
Okay, Michael, that's a lot to take on. All right, we've got a whole bunch of questions coming in, very, very interesting questions and challenges. Some of them are relating to some of the questions we've already received from people. So let's start with Bill Buchanan. Bill Buchanan is saying that in Scotland, we have lost a great deal of our manufacturing industry, and we are suffering from this now. How could we best rebuild a manufacturing industry in a world where it will always be less expensive to source something in another part of the world?
Well, if you look at it, you know, there's this old myth about China that they literally have built themselves into superpower, be it, you know, cheap labor, currency manipulation, all those other things. Those are actually the little tools they utilize on top of their technology strategy, okay, which is very meticulously increasing their capabilities such they could go from, you know, making trinkets to now making the most high-tech items, okay? So if we look at manufacturing in Scotland, which is a great question, what we need to do is, first of all, determine how to acquire a competitive advantage with the manufacturing we have right now, with the manufacturing technologies we have right now, okay? Which, in most cases, is going to amount to either a flank or an isolation maneuver, which means focusing very tightly on those capabilities which we can excel at from the technologies we have, which we excel at so much that it's very difficult for the competition to utilize or acquire those technologies to excel at satisfying that small set of customer needs. And they're more than happy to give it up, okay? For example, when Japan came into the United States in the auto industry, they did an isolation maneuver. They came in and focused very tightly on a part of the market that the United States auto manufacturers, again, I was in GM, my family was GM, I remember the stories back in the 70s that were like, if those Japanese want to take that market, let them have it. For us to be able to produce those small little 4-banger engines would require us to acquire the technology, revamp the production plants and everything else. So they've got the technology, let them have it as a small market size. What happened? Japan very meticulously moved up, acquired this technology, that tire, did a research there, alliance there, produced the products for GM, Ford, and very meticulously went from small cracker box cars to better, until eventually they were challenging and taking industry away from the U.S. auto manufacturers. So it's the same thing here. We start off, we lay out very precisely what our technology capabilities are internally and what we can acquire externally. Okay, see where we can, how we can very precisely and accurately execute a technology isolation maneuver, for example, to excel at satisfying customer need, which is going to be very difficult for the competition to do because of our technology capabilities. And they're more than happy to say, if you want it, you can have it in a small market. And then we've also, because a technology isolation maneuver consists of establishing a beachhead, but at the same time knowing in precise terms by the laws of physics, capability, flow, and time, how we can systematically expand out and do it in a way that whoever the competition is, if it's China, if it's whoever, they're consistently saying, well, that's just a little thing, you know. If they want to also put radios in the cars, Let them do it. Who really cares? They got radios in their cars. Oh, it's a really good radio. Well, it's better than ours, but yeah, it's some people like it, but that's a small increase in the market size, so we really don't care. That's what Japan did, and we do the same thing here. Now, it may be cars, it may be, and here's one of the cool things about seeing technology holistically from the four dimensions. It may be that the products we go into are something which we've never produced before in Scotland, because we see via flow into a different aspect of technology space, a different area, that all of a sudden we can produce underwater basket widgets with water retention or whatever better than anybody else, and all of a sudden we capture that market, and the big conglomerate who's doing it right now says, if you want it, guys, you can have it. It's a small market, and if we got to go in there and increase our capabilities to that level, it's just not worth it. So have a good day. And we say, yeah, thank you very much. They don't know that that's just the beginning of the beachhead, and we're systematically expanding from there. Make sense?
Okay, next question is from David Hood, and it relates to another question that we've already got here from one of our contributors. After the COVID lockdown, there may be 30 to 50% unemployment in the short term as businesses struggle to get back on their feet. How can Socrates help? And in terms of David Hood's question, how do we redefine growth in tech planning terms rather than financial, which puts humanity at the center rather than evolution or nice to have tech that is often not contributing benefits for all, but just for a few?
It goes back, first of all, to the definition of tech. We're just talking about high-tech gee whiz things. Yeah, he's correct. But when we talk about technology, it's high-tech, low-tech, medium tech, and also goes back to the full range of customer needs. If the customer needs is something as making sure there's food on the table, okay, it could be as simple as changing the insulation in some of the boxcars to decrease spoilage, and all of a sudden we've got more people fed. We've increased that by 10%, and the company that takes that technology of insulation, who already has it and puts it in the boxcars, all of a sudden has generated a competitive advantage, and their sales have gone up significantly. Okay, so you've got to keep in mind, and this goes back to mental shifts, that when we talk technology, it's the full range of technology, and it's the full range of capabilities, which also comes back to one of the founding objectives of Socrates. President Reagan, who I very much like, a great guy, and he does get misrepresented in the press sometimes, very much saw this shift in our society and other societies away from the individual and more towards the elite and the big organizations. Okay, and Socrates was founded on the principle of shifting the strength and the power back down to the small organizations, the individual, and everything else, because it allows, for example, a small company to see how they can have a competitive against a conglomerate like GM, and not just have to, excuse the expression, suck up to them and be beholden to them, but rather have a true competitive advantage such that they're controlling their own destiny. In many cases, it's by satisfying needs which are of the masses. I have a friend who's a self-made multi-millionaire, and he has a saying that goes, feed the classes, eat with the masses. Serve the masses, eat with the classes. Okay, and that's very, very true in the sense of Socrates was designed to address the full range of customer needs, high-tech, low-tech, medium, which is the full range of people and everything they need. Because again, that need can be something very, very basic like food, insulation, education, whatever. Make sense?
Awesome. All right, we've got a question from Cora. Cora says she would be interested to have thoughts on whether we might be able to utilize the Socrates system within the context of our wider ecological predicament, i.e. using the donut model of economics, whereby we adhere to the limits of the biosphere to support us whilst meeting human needs as a framework within which we organize the scale and nature of our economy.
Good question, and this is something we dealt in alternate energy, from photovoltaics to wind turbines to a bunch of stuff over the years. And there is one, and it goes along with what she's saying, there's one big problem, and we see this very much in the United States, where they think it's an all or nothing proposition, where to them technology planning consists of picking the winning technology and pouring all your money into it because you're smarter than the other guy and picking the winning technology. The world doesn't work that way, and it's highly ineffective and inefficient in addressing the issue of the environment and everything else. What needs to be done, and what is very, very effective, is developing a technology strategy that does just what she's saying, but does it from a technology aspect. For example, you're looking at all alternate energy as well as old-fashioned energy, okay? So you're looking at it holistically and you're saying, you know what? Coal will satisfy this customer need right now, but we can also address the environment by putting scrubbers. Now, that will be effective for about a year or two. At the same time, we see photovoltaics coming online, which if we cross-pollinate these technologies will increase the efficiency such that, is it going to replace coal to the next 5 years? No, but it will excel at satisfying the customer needs for computers. Because if you look at the requirements on the computers, they can be satisfied, the customer needs to be excelled at, can be achieved with photovoltaics in 2 years. So now all of a sudden, rather than trying to ram home photovoltaics as the be-all end-all to everything, we now know very adroitly that when that technology is cross-pollinated and comes to a certain level, it needs to go to this market because it excels at satisfying that customer need better than traditional batteries. At the same time, we know that wind energy or sea energy and all the other stuff will satisfy particular needs. Or we worked in flywheels, did massive work in flywheels. Couldn't get it over the line, but flywheels could be taking care of the need 5 years down the line with certain technology improvements, be it cross-pollination, whatever, such that it can take the load off the batteries, which is chemical batteries, which is relatively inefficient to a certain extent for cars or platforms, automobiles in general. So the point is, versus picking winners and losers, you're coming from a technology foundation to say, how can we maneuver in the technology to satisfy what particular customer needs, which will give us a true competitive in what particular markets or what points in time, such that we can systematically expand out to satisfy the overall energy needs, for example, systematically one at a time, growing out until all the needs are satisfied and we've moved away from coal and all the other ones that we need to move away from. Okay, but the key is very adroit maneuvering and adroit from Mushin, not hoping that if we put all our money into photovoltaics, you know what, in 6 years we'll have the big ass breakthrough and all this is going to, nothing's going to matter because everything's going to be photovoltaics. No, it's wiser and more effective to say, you know what, looking at the technology, if we cross-pollinate, bring in University of Edinburgh in with this professor here over at UT, that will cross-pollinate, that will get us to the level of battery efficiency for computers in 2 years, and it will generate a hell of a lot of money for the university at the same time, as well as the manufacturing plants. Okay. And we also point out that in some places where I've lectured, they take count and say, and I'll go at the end of the day and go, you have said, does that make sense? 364 times so far.
Mm-hmm. All right, we've got Bill Buchanan also asking, saying that Sir Harry Burns, who used to be the Chief Medical Officer in Scotland, argues that a major problem in scaling up COVID-19 testing is that we have lost a good part of our pharmaceutical supply chain and chemical industry. Have we lost our core understanding of the risks to our supply chain? And how should we best localize our economy better? Is globalization stuttering to a halt?
It's blind globalization is coming to a halt, we hope. And we also point out, and we're online, so I can't say a lot, but the people in the Intel community which are responsible for supply chain are people we work with. Okay, so we're very, very interested, we're very understanding of the problems there. The bottom line is, can any one country, I mean, let me step back. There is this knee-jerk reaction of, well, we can't be global, so therefore we'll be self-contained. Well, that's not effective either. Because Scotland, the US, no country can be 100% self-contained. Okay, that's alternated back and forth. You go back to World War II about isolation versus being part of the world and everything else. The key is not, can we be totally self-contained, but rather, can we execute technology strategies which allows us to ensure that we have the required competitive advantage relative to both what we need to be self-sufficient, as well as what we need to be in terms of having a competitive advantage relative to competitors. Okay, for example, let's say somebody in our supply chain comes back and says, you know what, guys, I've seen this, we're not going to supply your hard drives to your computer manufacturers, and we're the only hard drive supplier in the world. And we say, oh, you're right, boy, you're right, you're the only hard drive supplier. But you know what? You know that disk you've got underneath it, which you build it on? We're the only supplier for that. So if we don't get the, put it in simple terms, if we don't get the hard drives, you don't get the disk. You don't get the disk, you don't sell to anybody. So guess what? We're going to get our hard drives. So the point is, and we're talking about nasty negotiations in a way, but that's the way the world works, but being in a position of operating from a position of strength in terms of technology, strategy, and what have you, versus relying upon, well, it's an international world, and if we're nice to them, they'll be nice to us. And not understanding that they put themselves into a significant position of power such that they can dictate terms. And we've seen that. We saw that with a US computer manufacturer that kept on, a quick story, and I'm gonna tell you the names, kept on farming out all their components more and more and more. And somebody said, aren't you concerned that this one company that makes most of your components is basically doesn't need you pretty soon? They said, that's okay. We've got the architecture technology, and that's what's key. Without that, you really can't do it. Well, one day the supplier came in and said, you know what? I think we're gonna have a strike and we can't supply you with any more hard drives. Actually, he said, first, can we have the architecture technology? He said, no, you have that, you don't need us anymore. The guy said, true story, he said, yeah, you're right. You're pretty smart. You know what? I think our guys are going on strike. You're not gonna have any hard drives for the next 6 months to a year. Can we have the architecture technology? I said, yeah, you can have it. They went bankrupt after that because they really will not need it anymore as a company. Okay, simple example, true story, but it's a matter of being able to operate from a position of strength, and the strength comes from technology exploitation. Next question.
We've got a question from Christy Doherty. She says, I'm interested in hearing about behavior change and insights around leadership in a technology-based planning-led world. Traditionally, crisis management takes precedence in many contexts. This impacts on the scarcity of time and blame, etc. Working towards resolving these constraints requires a recalibration of leadership. What are your thoughts or experiences of this?
I have spent a large majority of my life, even before Socrates, definitely before Socrates, in places and times where there was major conflict. If you look at the world, and I started again long before Socrates on other programs, there's conflicts in the world that never make the press, never make the public view, which come very close to going very hot, very aggressive. So I've spent time in that environment. And then also with Socrates. There's a couple things I've learned. Number one, if you go into a meeting and most of what people have in the meeting is opinions, it gets down to a screaming match, it gets down to whoever has the loudest voice wins, and the decision often comes to the lowest common denominator of what's going to make the most number of people happy. Okay, and I used to like to use a little story that, you're driving down the car, you get a bunch of guys in the car, and there's a tree in the middle of the road standing like that. Half the people want to go around the car, turn the tree to the left, half them want to go around the tree to the right, so they compromise and go straight and hit the tree and all die. Okay. The point is if all you've got opinion and you got shortness in time, you get things which are lowest common denominator, pretty non-aggressive, pretty ineffective, and are executed in a half-assed fashion because nobody really believes in it because it's based on a bunch of opinions. Put that in contrast with you've got a technology space map, and we've done this for years. We got a map, we sit there and say, that's what company X is doing. They can't violate the laws of physics. They've acquired these technologies. By laws of physics, it says they're going to produce this product in 2 years. It's going to excel at cost, and it's going to knock us out of the market. Now, there's a small startup over here that's got this real cool lathe technology that can double our production rate and cut our cost by 50%. If we acquire that, do a technology counter-alliance to make sure they can't get it to undermine our flank attack, we can actually outcompete them within 6 months. That takes it from a bunch of hand-waving opinions to, here's the laws of physics, here in hard copy is the technology they have, which indicates very concretely, here's their technology strategy to excel at satisfying which customer need at what point in time, which will give them what competitive advantage. Then coming to a consensus is very relatively quick, easy, as well as buying buy-in both from the people in the room and the people afterwards that have to execute, much more effective, okay? Because if you look at it, and I've seen this many times in corporations where the grand poobahs get to make it together and make a decision. We're going to go after cost. We're going to go after longevity of product. If the decision goes down the chain for execution, the guys at the general manager and things like that look at that and then say, what idiot developed this? We don't need to be going after cost. I have no idea how they did that, but we'll give it a lick and a promise and we'll do something, but we're not going to be very aggressive on it. Okay. Compare that with the guy down the line saying, I want to know why you did cost. And he says, let me show you. See, competitor X, they're doing this with this, which is doing this to decrease cost because of this technology they're bringing in from Korea. Damn straight, we need to counter that. And it's going to hit us in 2 years. Simple example, but that's the big difference, and we've dealt with that literally for years, going all the way back to is a short story, in the White House and making decisions, SecDef, things like that. Intelligence, DIA was constructed in order to counter CIA to give a counter viewpoint, which means there was always arguments going on. But when you walk in, lay out a map and hard copy and say, let me show you what's going on, that ends the argument. They may argue about a few points and a couple, side issues, but it goes away very, very rapidly.
Okay, question from Brian Baglow. One enduring issue is less to do with our technical or creative capabilities and more to do with our inability to believe in, promote, and sell our capabilities to both internal and international markets. How on earth do we build a more confident and secure society with a view to long-term success rather than a fast exit?
Fabulous question. One of the key things to be effective, Socrates needs to be deployed for the entire ecosystem, okay? Which means, and it goes back to one of the questions, education, government, manufacturing, R&D, trade, policy, the whole ball of wax, okay? What this allows it to do, it does many things. So what it allows it to do is for people to see, because ideally you produce a national technology strategy which works symbiotically with the individual organizations and their individual technology strategies. But now people can see in concrete terms exactly how we're going to generate, how we, Scotland, is going to generate a competitive advantage, what it is based upon, and from there be very committed, as well as have the tools to commit to convince other people that we know what we're doing, we have the competitive advantage, and we can make things happen. For example, if you are a salesman for widgets and you're sent to France to sell your widgets, and you walk into a company and say, we got a widget. They say, great widget, what can it do? Well, I don't know, what do you do here? Oh, you make bread. I think it makes bread better. Well, okay, how does it make bread better? Well, better plastics. Compare that with walking in and saying, okay, you're making bread here. We've got a temperature control here, which will allow you to increase the spatial and temporal characteristics of your ovens such that you can decrease lossage by 10%, which increases your profit by about 6 to 7%. Okay. We also know that this temperature controller, sensor and controller, is the best in the world by 2 years, and it is also patented, and it is also controlled in a fashion with various other ways that it will enable you to maintain that competitive advantage for at least 5 years of decreasing your cost, which will increase your profit by this percentage. That's all by the laws of physics. There's no magic there. There's no hand waving of buy this thing because we've got a soccer player that really liked it, was on TV. I'm being a little facetious, but that's, I've dealt enough with the marketing people and things like that, that actually the marketing people love it because they know a lot of times they're handed a product and told, go sell it. And they're like, great, what does it do? Well, it's a widget. You figure out how to sell it. And they say, it's great. Now I know I've got a widget which excels at this, satisfies this customer needs for these markets, for these people, and we know how long it's going to last. So I can go out there and do true branding versus branding because of, you know, cool things, but rather branding in terms of we can satisfy this need, we do it better than anybody else, and we can prove it to you. Take our bloody thing, put it in there, lock it in, and you can see how well it performs. And it will outperform the other guy, and I will guarantee it. That's the difference. Does that make sense? And again, we're really high level. But the other thing is, we have found that when people know they have a competitive advantage and they know well they will maintain the competitive advantage, you know, the technology strategy is not just short term, but rather it's dealing with the universities, it's dealing with the level below that, both in the trade schools and whatever, such that this food chain of people and technologies, people being the know-how, will continue to maintain a company and the country's competitive advantage. But it's not a drop in the bucket for, well, we got that product out, what are we going to do after this? And the people coming up are not connected. The technology strategies are developed in universities such that they are being educated with the best technology, number one. And number two, the needs of the industry, which is where the students need to get jobs, is in sync with the education, and the students know it. If I go into this degree program, I know those companies are going to be heading that in AI and whatever in the next 5 years, such that when I graduate, I'm going to be a grand poobah, and people are going to give me a lot of money to go work for them. So I'm going to bust my butt to become a really good AI guy. So, next question.
Okay, we've got another one from Bill Buchanan. He says, we have collapsed international travel, and which formed a core part of our world. If the airlines fail, will all the industries associated with international travel also fail? For Scotland, will tourism, business-focused conferences, hospitality, and so on now crash? If they crash, won't the whole economy crash too?
It comes back to, if we look at it, all the competitors are in the same boat. Okay, so if we talk about hospitality, if we talk about all these things, hospitality is in the same problem, has the same problem in the US, France, Germany, what have you. Okay, so if we're all in the same boat in that respect, and we can go back down to the technology level, then at that point we can figure out how we can exploit technology to regenerate a competitive advantage. Okay, if you look at, for example, the airline industry, they're shifting from people to equipment. Okay, let's say we can now take the gas turbine engines, which do more than just drive planes, but rather produce energy or do a lot of other things, and all of a sudden those gas turbine engines, is a very simple example, which are on the airplane, can be used for other things. Okay, and again, but the key is, and it's very, very important, it's not a matter of bringing in a consultant that says, I'm going to rub my temples and guess what? I'm going to come up with a new magical technology or market you should go into. Not very effective, because to generate and maintain competitive advantage, it's not a matter of picking the next magic marker, the next magic technology, but rather very adroit maneuvering, which needs a map. So we can sit there and say, oh, in order to maintain the cash flow we need to take our airplanes and start really doing cargo. Okay. At the same time, we need to figure out how, and this is a stupid example, take those planes and turn them into mobile hotels. Okay, I don't know. But if you can map out all the present and future technologies, we can see how we can very adroitly to, okay, we're going to do this and set the stage from here to go here. In many ways, and this is something that's cool, we call it fluidity of the technology, like playing chess or playing pool. A good pool player makes shots. A great pool player makes position. Okay, which means you don't just try to sink a ball. You try to sink a ball and then make sure the balls are aligned such the next guy has a real difficult time in dropping a ball. Okay, same thing here. You are very adroitly positioning that we will do that, and then we will go there, and then we'll go there. And in many cases, it's very small acquisition, utilization of technology. And it's also symbiotic relationships, where the aerospace industry sees, you know what, we need to align technologically and leverage technology from this industry, that industry, and what have you, to continue to generate the required competitive advantage. Next question. Okay,
we've got another one from Cora. She says, it seems clear that Socrates can be of utility in a range of social and business applications. It would be great to hear it might be employed in crisis management situations. One major issue coming to mind being the rapidly deteriorating situation in East Africa, where vast locust plagues are decimating crops. The issue is largely being overlooked, with other international crises taking precedence. If Socrates can be used to help provide humanitarian triage in such a situation, it would be great to get the lowdown.
Well, and if you look at Socrates in terms of our mandate from President Reagan, it basically had 3 levels. First thing is we start taking care of our own, the United States, start providing support to the allies, and then from there start addressing the issues facing mankind. Okay, so Socrates was designed to go after hunger, food, plague, and everything else. Because if you look at it, and I've dealt with various nonprofits over the years, they address it usually from a financial perspective. They spend all their time trying to figure out how can we get money, which is extremely important. But the exploitation of technology dictates how effectively that money can be spent. Okay, are you going to spend it on a technology which literally only does half the job? And again, it comes back to people say, well, what's the exact details? I have no idea. What we need to do in the way it works is to be able to map out technology, see what technologies are worldwide, and then from there figure out how we can leverage them, how we can exploit them for the disease, the hunger. It may be that, totally eliminating the locust is much more important and more effective than just shipping in tons of food around the world and getting more and more money to ship in food. Okay, now, ideally, what I think we'll find out is both. We've got to be, because we know the technology is going to take us, so many weeks to do or months to do this. So therefore, we start launching out that. At the same time, we're swinging around to go for the money. Now, there's also the play that, as I have learned many, many times, when you go into somebody and say, give me some money, they're like, oh, cool, why? Well, we want to solve a problem. When you can walk in and say, let me show you what we're going to do. Here's our technology strategy. If we get this money and we've figured out the transshipment, we need this, here's the best food to get, whatever. Now, at the same time, from there, we're doing this technology with the bio people to actually decrease the locusts because we're going to go after their ability to breed at the same time, or their whatever. And at the same time, we found out they like for this food, which we're going to send them over there. So we've got a 2-pronged attack, near term and midterm, for the locusts to decrease the impact of their trying to bring in food in the most efficient way. And that's why I need the money. Much more effective, because now you're showing how you're systematically going to exploit the technology to near, mid, and long term solve the problem. Versus, as Gates did once, buying a lot of computers, shipping over to Africa and saying, you guys are going to be a bunch of entrepreneurs. And I think most of them are out on the docks. So.
Right. So we're going to have to wrap up there pretty much. It's we're coming up to 25 past. We've got the last 5 minutes now to just map out what happens next. I'm sure everybody's got a whole bunch of more questions we want to be asking Michael, but this has just been an introductory session today. And I can see loads and loads more questions starting to pile in as well as we're running out of time. So, but today has just been an introductory session, and we are planning a couple, 3 more sessions where we can have ongoing Q&A, where Michael's kindly offered to help work with individual businesses, sectors, and start demonstrating how the mapping process evolves. Margaret, if you'd like to take over here and explain how the next couple of sessions might operate if people want to continue on the journey discovering more about the Socrates system.
Gladly. The idea is now to, after the introduction, to engage people into learning process. We need time, all of us need the time to absorb it and to do that mind shift. And in order to do that, Mike will take us through the journey with a pen and paper, where every one of us will be able to experience the Socrates and to actually learn how to do it. What is it involved? Because if we don't try something, if we don't learn it, how are we going to understand it? How are we going to explain it to others? And how are we going to implement it? So that's from the beginning was the idea to engage us a little bit more into the detail, into the practical detail. And this is what I would like to emphasize, that education is not a theory, education is practice. So now we need to practice. And I would like to ask all our participants because this session is going to be on YouTube, to engage with others through the links, so others understand the introductory practice, and then to have a group of learners. The first class is going to be on the 30th of April, which is in a week, and then consecutive weeks on the 7th of May and 14th of May. The same time, the same format, probably some new people, and we are going to learn how to take that initiative forward. We gotta learn it first. And after we learn it, after those 3 sessions, we'll be able to take it closer into the sectors. Because as Mike said, and as I am repeating, the need is there to put it holistically under every part of our economy, of our life. We have to come out of this lockdown. We have to restart the economy, and we have to do it smartly. And we have to also do it carefully. And that gives us a time. This is why we picked every week session, because that gives us a time probably right to the end of our lockdown. So we are actually going to spend our time very productively while we are getting well, relaxed, or plotting what is our next move. So that's the strategy. And actually, I am a strategist. So any strategic questions, me, Mike, we will be gladly answering them. And we would like to engage with as many organizations as possible. As I said, we are outsiders, but Scotland is a wonderful country. Scots are wonderful people, and it will be great to see that mission coming into the fruit of a great nation, great country that is the leader forward in the new, well, for the better world, in the new enlightenment. This is the new enlightenment of Scotland. So there is the chance for Scotland again to lead the world, to give some new values to everybody. Also, I would like to say that we have another initiative coming, and that initiative is actually, the name of it is the Scottish Space Power Initiative. That is something that we put together with Bill Buchanan, Cyber Academy, that's Napier University, Paul Szymański, that's Space Strategic Center, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Space Technology Scotland, that's Matt Houghton, and myself and my entire organization, because I am not just there are many people in my organizations in several countries, and we all come together with that initiative. And that one is basically a think tank that has to do with cybersecurity, that has to do with cyberspace, also space warfare, which not many people understand, but we would like to bring it to everyone. And of course, the technology. Scotland is a small country, but we have great technology here. So let's put those people all together, apply Socrates to it, and conquer the world, and actually restart our economy on that technology. We are a driving force in satellites. So let's be the driving force for everyone. Once we learn and apply, then we can sell it. We can give it to the others. We can do whatever we see the best for the world. So that first section of that very first lecture for the Space Power Initiative, the Scottish Space Power Initiative, is going to be on May 4th, and that will be joint session between Bill Buchanan and Paul Szymański, and they will say exactly what the think tank is going to do. And I'm hoping that Matt is going to have all our entrepreneurs, all the small, medium enterprises, everybody who actually are in business, who wants to restart, to take opportunity, take advantage of that, because then we have Michael, and we will be able to start it with technology planning. And rather, to me, it's rather logical that we plan technology with technology. We ask for money later. Many people ask me how much money I have spent to put all these initiatives together. Well, very little, because it is not necessary to actually run after investors at the very beginning when you have idea. First, you have to develop the idea. First, you have to have everything what you need to have. You have to understand what you're going to do, and then you go for investors. Actually, at that point, investors come to you, and this is what our SMEs, this is what our incubators and hubs have to understand. This is why 90% of them fail, because they run after the money and then they buy paper clips instead of getting the development going on first. I mean, I know you're laughing, but that's how it is. This is what I observed, and I observed it all over the world. I lived in like 60 different countries here and there during my work. So I'm really speaking from experience.
The reason I laugh is I've seen it too, where the entrepreneurs go in there and they're buying coffee cups, things like that, and you're like, what's your competitive, what's your product? And they're like, I don't know, but I got a real cool coffee cup and the coffee's great here. And it's like,
I will figure out what I want to do with it.
I've seen it.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Okay, so in summary, basically on May the 4th, or we're going to make sure that the 4th is with you in May. We've got the launch of the Scottish Space Power Initiative. And then same time next week, we've got the first of 3 hands-on experiences of the Socrates system with Michael and Margaret at the helm as well. So if you're all happy with that, we're going to be posting everything up on YouTube, social media and everything like that, so you can share it around with everybody. Invite more thinkers and doers into the discussion, so we can map our way forward as a nation and in our respective businesses.
Yes, and also I would like to add that we received many questions before the show, and all these questions are answered. So I think we are going to be, we should share all these questions and all the great answers with everyone, because that will give you an idea of the range and of the actual application of Socrates. And you will have actually something in writing. I see some of you have made notes. That's wonderful, but we can provide more of that. So it's like a food for thought and for experience. And then also we would like everyone to post more questions to us. So we actually start the first session with your questions. That is very important. So let's make it interactive, because interactive learning, I really believe in interactive learning. This is what we need, and each one of you represents your own business or your own department, and you have specific questions that probably nagging you. And that is important that we put that all to work collectively. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You.
We'll see you next week, hopefully.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.